So guys, I don't know about you, but I was curious, what is this prize that the guy who has tweeted the most today is gonna get? Because I've been tweeting so much, hoping to win the prize. So here it is, an X Mini. It's a really nice, compact, high-quality speaker you can connect to your phone or to your laptop. And it goes to the person who has tweeted the most today. All right, next, I want to introduce our next speaker. He comes from Founder-Centric, Jordan Schlipf. Jordan, welcome on stage.
Thank you.
Sure.
Howdy. Good afternoon. I am between you and lunch. So I'm going to get through this. I really agreed with a lot of what Marvin was saying previously. So I'm just going to try and build on that where I can. And let's get to lunch. So I'm going to talk to you today about the traction process. And let's figure this one out. The traction process. Anytime now. It's just lunch. Keep going. Oh, yeah. Woo! Before I do that, I'm one of the partners at Founder-Centric. And I know you've met Devin early this morning, so I won't labor it. We're a collection of 4 serial entrepreneurs who've been through accelerator programs, who've raised money, who've been investors. And really, what we're passionate about now is designing and teaching startup education, entrepreneurship education. We really want to increase your chance of success and get you to build the businesses of your dreams. So, the traction process. As Marvin referenced before, this is the awesome book by Gabriel Weinberg and James. It's the traction book. I highly recommend that you go out and buy it. And I'm just going to briefly go through some of the stuff that's in this book. Now, Gabriel Weinberg, his startup is one of the dumbest ideas possible. He is competing directly with Google on search. His startup is DuckDuckGo. Like, why would you do this? Why would you use this instead of Google? But the interesting thing around this, he is succeeding. He is succeeding to systematically gain searches and traction and volume from Google. Now, each one of these points is an interesting methodology he's applied to get that, and I will come back to that later. So he's succeeding. The real question is, how is Gabe doing this? How does he go and take traffic off Google? Well, the interesting thing is Gabe has seen top 5 key mistakes he's seen other founders make. And Gabe, he's built a ton of companies. He is an investor, right? He's building DuckDuckGo. He's someone we can trust. Mistake number 1. They didn't start traction until they finished the product development. So where founders go and they build the entire product, and then they're like, oh, now we need to go get traction. By doing traction in parallel at the same time as doing your product, there are some awesome benefits you can get from this, right? So using that initial customer development to inform your product roadmap. Matt Clayton, who's the CTO of Mixcloud, who's got just over 2 million monthly active users. With his product, he started to turn off features to see if anyone would complain. And what he found, there was a ton of features that when he turned off, no one complained. He had built a ton of stuff, which he estimated was about 6 months of dev time, that was completely unnecessary. So this concept here is using that initial customer development to inform what you're building and why and when is really, really important. It also allows you to test your messaging and your distribution channels before you've even launched the product, so that when you do launch, you have a nice base of initial users. I've seen some phenomenal startups basically fail because they run out of runway. They run out of money and have to stop and go get a real job. Right? This is the reality of being an entrepreneur. There is this short period of time, we need to go and build our business. And unfortunately, when we have investors and people looking at us and saying, have you got the company to a stage where I can invest in it? Common questions are always along the lines of, how are you going to go get users? Oh, I'm just going to blog. I'm going to go on Facebook. Well, what evidence is that you're going to work, that's going to work for your business? What evidence do you have that you can do this with your team? So it is really important to pursue, to do traction in parallel with product development. Mistake number 2, the teams didn't spend enough time on traction. Now, if we think about this in terms of distribution, distribution is equally important as product. You could have the best product in the world. You say you've got the iPod, but you cannot get it to the customer, it is useless. So the way I like to think about this is you should be spending 50% of your time on trying to figure out how to get it to the customer, how to get your product or your service to the customer, thinking about distribution. Now, the thing I like to think about here is like tech teams in particular play to their strength, which is building products. But this is everyone. This is a fundamental human nature. We are lazy creatures. We take the path of least resistance naturally. What does that mean? It means that if you're an awesome hacker and coder, what do? You build product, because that's what you're good at. And you've got something that is coming out, that is tangible. You look at it and go, ooh, my website, my app, we are making progress, team, right? We stick to the stuff that we are good at. But unfortunately, in order to make a business success, there are other things you cannot afford to ignore. Distribution is definitely one of them. Mistake number 3. They didn't take advantage of these micro opportunities. These micro opportunities, essentially, these are unexpected and temporary things that pop up that allow you to spike your growth, that allow you to take advantage and gain traction. If we were to think about this and we look back at what Gabe is doing, every one of these little bots, numbers, is a micro opportunity that Gabe has seen and jumped on and capitalized on to generate growth for his business, DuckDuckGo. Letter B is, I love this. This is awesome. So there's this massive Google press where Google is getting slayed in the press for stealing your privacy, right? And it was hitting the news, the main-time news. And so Gabe was like, they are getting slated. This is an opportunity for me. So he said, I'm going to put a billboard up. In 24 hours, he had a billboard up in San Francisco where Google is headquartered, which is like, Google tracks you, we don't. Come to DuckDuckGo, right? This is a micro opportunity. This might not be scalable to continually do billboards like this as an engine of growth, but it's an opportunity to play with an experiment and to potentially capitalize and not leave money or users on the table, to take it off. I also like to think about this in terms of new platforms. Marvin also mentioned this. Instagram, Twitter, they only made advertising possible in recent years. Imagine if you were there when Instagram launched and made publicly available the advertising platform, and you started to advertise in that. What an opportunity. It's like turning up at a massive supermarket and you're the only product on the shelf. You don't have the competition. It isn't saturated. So these might be micro opportunities that eventually, when the rest of the market floods into Instagram or into the channel, it might become too expensive for you. It might not end up working in the long run. But it's a great opportunity to jump in when it arises. But in order to be doing that, you need to be spending time. You need to have that 50% of your time ring-fenced to be able to capitalize and to see these opportunities. You have to be watching, flexible and creative. So you need to be spending enough time on it. Who here thinks they are spending 50% of their time on pursuing traction at the same time as building their product or service? A few of you, you're awesome. So, mistake number 4, they were biased toward or away from certain traction verticals. What is a traction vertical? It is just a channel. It is an opportunity where you can go and acquire users and gain users. So there are these things where it's traction comfort zones. Every startup relies on blogging, Twitter, and AdWords, but they can't be the solution for everyone. What about billboards? What about PR? What about publicity stunts? The reality here is I'm a sales guy, so I try to solve a lot of my traction problems by just selling, direct sales. That is my comfort zone, and I need to have the discipline to break that natural tendency I have to play to my strengths and to really make sure I've explored, and the team, we have explored the big picture, all the options, so that we know that we have found the best few available to create the most value for our business. Mistake number 5. They didn't take a systematic approach to getting traction. The usual approach is to build a product, then frantically try to figure out how to promote things, then haphazardly attempt the obvious stuff. Oh, a bit of blogging. Oh, let's do some Twitter, bit of Facebook. Google AdWords, yay. It's not good enough. And if you have that clock of runway, are you going to be able to get your business to the stage where it unlocks the next investment? Be it joining an accelerator program, getting some business angel funding, seed capital. Are you going to be able to do that before you have to go get a real job? So let's quickly blitz through the traction process before we get to lunch. Now, there is no recipe for growth. If I had that, I'd be sitting on my yacht, tanning myself right now. But as in all parts of startup, there is no clear steps or best practices for figuring out marketing or growth. Instead, we have to take this iterative, experimental approach, which is what Marvin was talking about. It's what Eric's talking about in Lean Startup. It's what Steve Blank and Bob Dorff talk about in the Startup Owner's Manual. So let's talk about just the approach of the process. 1, have an educated guess at a few traction verticals. So the question you need to ask yourself is, what are some of the ideas for the most promising traction verticals for your business? So let's go through the big picture, or a snapshot of it. Traditional PR. What about newspapers? What about magazines? Television ads? What could a PR firm do for your business? Publicity stunts. Rename a Bulgarian town after your company. Right? Balloon around the world with a goatee. How can you get their attention? What about search engine ads? Unexploited search terms, cheap keywords. How much does a click actually cost you? How much does it make you? Online display ads, Reddit ads, StumbleUpon ads, sponsor a blog, sponsor a podcast. Who else has page views and needs money? What about SEO, which is basically content marketing? Have you exposed the content you already have? Where would you expose it? Could you create content at scale? Can users create content at scale for you? What about biz dev and partnerships? Exchanging mailing lists, a widget on someone else's website, cross promotions, celebrity evangelists. What do you need? What can you offer? Blogs in a target market. Who are the top blogs and the writers? What could you offer them? Exclusive content? Maybe it's product giveaways. Give them free samples, tools, guest posts. Your blog, what if it took it seriously? Do you have access to unique data and insights? What is the main call to action of your blog? Could it be optimized? What about viral and referrals? Are there any features inherently about sharing and including other people in your product or service? If not, could you add some referral mechanism? What if the whole product was about that feature? User gets user. Trade shows, rent a booth, give a talk, sponsor a trade show, show up and mingle, collect sales leads and business cards. Create your own trade show. Public speaking, conferences, yay! Workshops, industry meetups, speaking online via YouTube or webinars. This is really powerful stuff. Existing platforms, build on top of Facebook, Pinterest, iOS, MySpace, apps with Salesforce, Microsoft, Xbox, all of these things. Direct sales, hitting the pavement, cold calls, LinkedIn messengers. Have you actually tried picking up the phone? We live in a world now where it's so inbox heavy. Have you actually tried picking up the phone? Do it. Create an event, conferences, workshops, webinars. Meet your pastors for your customers. I know Martin and Chris and all the organizers of Startup Next personally. They've become friends. Right? They've met Bob Dorff. Bob Dorff knows who they are. It's catapulted them to the top of the industry. And it's given them an insane network they can now leverage. What about you creating your own event, meetup? Offline ads, billboards, newspapers, events, flyers, and posters. Have you realized how effective mail campaigns still are to this day? Have you tried it? What about acquiring a small business or smaller sites? Some small sites can be bought for less than $10,000, which, to be honest, I can't afford. But in theory, you could go and do this, right? Has anyone in your space gained a bit of traffic and failed to monetize it? Do you just buy that traffic? What is the abandoned properties in terms of domain names out there? Can you reach out to the ex-founders? Basically, there are a ton of options. Make sure you explore them, right? So, step one, have an educated guess through all these options at a few traction verticals for your business. Number two, list them all out in potential usefulness, which is your initial guess, right? Then approach the most promising verticals, say your top 5, with small but effective tests. They need to be measurable. Right? So Pack Coffee, for example, that just sells subscription coffee. In the early days, so Stephen Rappaport, the founder of this business, originally his first business was a business called Crash Powder, which he sold to Airbnb, exactly the same. And now he's doing subscription coffee. In the early days, he was like, where can I test? One of my channels are going to be effective for me? He's like, what about ads on Reddit as a community, in the coffee forums and the blogs? So he started pasting bit.ly links in these coffee forums on Reddit and saying, hey, if you love amazing coffee, check it out. And he was tracking it. He's like, oh, Reddit seems to be working. So let's try and let's spend $50 on online display ads on Reddit and measure what happens. He started experimenting by putting in leaflets in with Amazon orders in the packages to see if that channel would work for him. Turns out it does, and it works really well for Pack Coffee. So if one or two, this is step 4 in the traction process. If one or two of the initial 5 seems promising, focus hard on them. Double down on those 2 things. Really optimize them. In summary, the traction process is this simple. Have an educated guess of a few traction verticals, step 1. 2, list them all out in potential usefulness and make sure you've thought about all of them. Don't be lazy. Approach the most promising verticals with small but effective tests that you can measure so you know whether it's successful or not. And 4, if one or two of the initial 5 seems promising, focus hard and double down on it. But do not forget the 5 common mistakes. You have to be spending the time. Do not fall to the traction comfort zones. That's it. Gabriel Weinberg wrote the book, Traction Book. I'd highly recommend it. It's awesome. We are founder-centric. If you love cat photos, follow me on Twitter. Otherwise, let's have lunch. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot. So guys, as you know, next step on the agenda is a lunch break. Remember, what's your goal? Meet at least one person you have never met before. All right, let's go have lunch.